I shall now introduce our distinguished guest, Professor Benjamin Obadiah Igbo Zephaniah, to the Assembly. The man we honour today exemplifies the transformative power of words and of language in our lives. For him, language is a living force. His pioneering performances pulse with its energy and possibility. His written work taps into the human beat. Word power changed him, and he has inspired others. Odd then, or perhaps apt, that finding the precise word to define Benjamin Zephaniah and all he represents is no simple task. His exploration of words, their inner music, and power to reach out and include has been a long trip. Professor Zephaniah is a poet, one of great distinction and acclaim, a playwright, a novelist, a children's writer, a recording artist, a public performer, a straight actor, a respected social commentator, one regularly seen on television, in the heat of thorny debate, relishing the chance to cut through perceived pretension and keep things real, the better to connect people. He most recently defined himself as a troublemaker, explaining, "If you didn't have troublemakers, women wouldn't have the vote. I'd probably be back in slavery, and you need troublemakers to challenge the establishment, and I want to be one of those people." The passion for politics in its purest sense, as a way of understanding people and how they live in relation to others, is innate. So is the gift of language. Zephaniah says he cannot remember a time when he was not creating poetry. It's strange then to imagine a time when, during his Birmingham boyhood, Benjamin Zephaniah actually hated writing and hated reading, at least during his school days, which ended when he was 13. He points at the lack of understanding, of sympathy, even of expectation. I was a dyslexic, but the word dyslexic wasn't used. I was called stupid. I was told that because I was a young black boy, I didn't have to really concentrate on reading and writing and arithmetic because I'd be good at sports. It was a different time. But there was poetry in him, innate and influenced by the rhythms and rhymes of Jamaica. His Handsworth hometown is, he insists, the European capital of Jamaica, and what he calls street politics. His first real public performance was in church, aged 10. By 15, he had developed a strong following in Handsworth, where he had gained a reputation as a young voice speaking the language of local and international issues. As he put it in the poem Dispoetry, "Dispoetry is for you and me. Don't stretch your imagination. Dispoetry is for the good of the nation." His horizons expanded by positive street reaction to his work. At 22, Zephaniah headed to London, where his first book, Pen Rhythm, was published by a cooperative helping community poets. Pen Rhythm sold well, allowing the writer to develop the live performances dubbed reggae poetry. This would cause a revolution that stirred new ideas across the whole spectrum of British poetry. It also drew interest from the same mainstream publishers that had sent refusal letters months earlier. The unrest and dissatisfaction of the early 1980s found eloquent expression in Zephaniah's words. Heard, learned and chanted as they were at demos, at marches, but also in clubs and in living rooms. It was nothing short of a mission to take poetry everywhere and reach people who did not read books nor consider poetry relevant. In the decades that followed, the mission has continued across the world and in a vast literary output, in record releases and countless appearances. Anywhere the oral tradition is still strong, life has been one long tour, but this is the only way the oral tradition can live. The dedication is strong too. In one memorable 22nd day period, he performed on every continent on this planet. We are indeed fortunate to have such a busy man here today, a man whose doctor once diagnosed exhaustion after examining Professor Zephaniah's diary. Truly a book with a message. So the transformative power of words turned a boy who grew up in a house without books. If my dad saw me trying to read, he would say, "You got nothing to do?" And with a less than positive experience of the schoolroom, into an author of engaging, issue-led titles for children and the recipient of multiple academic honours. He became a man determined to use his powers to open up possibilities for others, also lending his support to human rights and animal rights campaigns. He remembers, "Once upon a time there was this boy playing truant and following me around when I was doing performances in libraries. I said to the audience that in my new book of poetry, I'm going to write on it, 'Not to be taught in schools.' Afterwards, the kid came to me and said, if your books were in school, I would go to school. And I thought, who am I to deny? To me, it's not about black, white, Asian, whatever. To me, it's about literature for everybody." A few months ago, Montfort University was honoured to welcome Professor Zephaniah to campus for a cultural exchanges event and for an inspiring talk on the power of words. This urge to spread the word goes right back to his roots. "This poetry's from inside me, it goes to you with love." In that same spirit, we honour him now. Professor Benjamin Obadiah Ikbo Zephaniah, for your pioneering of performance poetry and tireless championing of literature, taken around the world to schools, universities, concert halls, and in public spaces, for your creative innovation and willingness to challenge convention, to make trouble, we honour you today.
Professor Benjamin Zephaniah, I confer on you the degree of Honorary Doctor of Arts. I congratulate you and welcome you amongst us.
I call upon Professor Benjamin Zephaniah to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much, and I just want to say it's a real pleasure to be here. Chancellor, all you wonderful people. I wanted to talk a little bit about my life. First of all, I'm going to apologise, it's probably not the right word, but I don't have a written speech. I speak from the top of my head. Sometimes I think I shouldn't do it, but I like to just speak from the heart, and so that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm very dyslexic, so if I start trying to read, I waste a lot of energy trying to read. So I just try and be honest. You heard a lot about my life. I did leave school at the age of 13. I wasn't able to read and write. But poetry saved me, and I want to talk a little bit about poetry. But I want to go back a little to when I was about 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, I suffered my first racist attack. I was walking down the street in Hockley in Birmingham, and a boy came from behind me. He was riding a bicycle, and he had a brick in his hand, and he slapped the brick in the back of my head. If you could imagine the force from the momentum of the bicycle and then his hand at the same time. My head cracked open, and blood started pouring out of it. And as he did this, he said, and please excuse my language, he said, "Go home, you black bastard." So I went home to my mother. I was crying, of course. And my mother, she was a nurse and she was looking after my head. But I was very confused. I said, "Mother," he said, "Go home, you black bastard. I've come home. I am black. But what's a bastard?" And my mother was so embarrassed, she didn't want to tell me what a bastard was. And then she explained to me that there are some people in this country that don't like people of colour. And I just couldn't understand it, because I love the idea that we come in all shapes and sizes and all colours. I had a couple of more attacks, similar, not as bad as that one. And then when I was in my early 20s, I went to London to further my career. I didn't call it a career then. I just wanted to do more poetry. And there was a few girls chasing me as well, so I had to get out of town. But when I was in London, you know, this is the early 80s, this may be a bit difficult for some people to imagine now, but there was organisations called the National Front and other gangs of racists. And there were some places in London that were absolutely no-go areas for people like me and people like a lot of you here. Night after night, me and my friends would have to fight our way from clubs to get home. And I bear a lot of scars from those fights. They were very, very difficult times. I'd like to think we've moved on from those times. The reason why I'm mentioning all this now is because I love this city, Leicester. As a teenager, I used to come here. I remember we used to have this saying in Birmingham that in Leicester, the girls just tasted better. So it was quite exotic to leave Birmingham and come to Leicester back in the day. But I was just on the outskirts of Leicester last night as I was coming here. And there was a woman in a petrol station who I heard being racially abused. And my heart sank. She wasn't physically attacked, she was just racially abused. Not just, but she was racially abused. And I just kind of felt rather sad, thinking that this is still happening now. But then I thought, well, look what happened in Paris the other day. Look at what's happening all over the world. I'm not talking about just religion now, I'm talking about all kinds of bigotry. I've looked at a lot of these bigots and a lot of these racists and a lot of these extremists of one kind or another. And one thing I think they all have in common, they don't really have any poetry in their lives. We need more poetry. It is a great thing. It brings people together. It gave me a voice. The young me who was dyslexic, who felt that I wasn't being listened to by adults or the establishment or the police or my parents or my school. I used poetry to tell the world how I felt. I was unable to really read and write, but I still had a lot to say, and I started saying it on the streets. It's given me a voice, and not everybody can be a poet, but if there's one message that I have for everybody here today, people, the young people who are graduating, the families, their friends, even some of the academics, you should all have some poetry in your life. It is a great thing. It is a way of reaching out and touching people. And I can tell you right now, I stand here and I look at all you beautiful people and I want to reach out and touch you. But I know that's illegal. So I just do a few poems. This university, the Montfort University, Leicester, is a great place. I know it's a great place because I know people who have graduated from here and I know people that have taught here. People leave here and they go on to have influence in the world. They go on to change the world. And I hope some of them will go on to be great leaders in the world. But wherever you are, whatever you're doing, please, please, have some poetry in your life. Increase the peace. Thank you.